Are you someone who wants to be a game master but are rebuffed by how much time it seems to take, or a GM that feels like you spend so much time prepping you look 5 years older than when you first started your campaign like 6 months ago? Don't worry, Brewmaster's got you. I'm going to teach you a minimal approach to campaign design that makes GMing practical in today's day and age. But first we need to start by eliminating the list of things that you don't need to prepare, which quite shockingly are: your starting village. Don't need that. The tavern? No. Prominent NPCs? Maybe interesting locations. The bad guy? What his powers are? Even what his name is? Nah, none of that. And here is where you think I'm about to give you the worst piece of DM advice ever, which is, man, don't prep it, just wing it, it'll be fine.
Preposterous.
That's ridiculous. We're all adults here, and in real life, you're not going to really get anywhere without proper planning, and running a game is no different. But by knowing exactly what to prep, you can give yourself a solid base to work from and save copious amounts of time. You can avoid preparing things that ultimately will go unused. So without further ado, these are the tricks and the hacks that I use as a DM to prep and run multiple custom games, both professionally and personally, without working until I'm like a dried out, withered husk of a game master. So note, I highly recommend the use of roll charts to speed things up. And throughout the video, I'll have some pop-up referencing the different roll charts that I use and where you can find them. Everything I say here will vary based on what you want at your own table and what you want to do for your campaign. So there's some definite design do's and don'ts, but most of what I say can change depending on what you specifically want at your table. And there's nothing wrong with spending weeks or even months custom tailoring every part of your world, because world building can be fun and relaxing. But if you're someone who finds the task daunting, then this process will help you. This method is best for scraping together a campaign that lasts about 5 to 10 sessions. But let's not waste a moment more, because game time is in like 1 or 2 hours at most, and we're gonna need something workable before then. So our design philosophies here are: 1, you're never gonna prepare more than your players can reasonably interact with in 1 or 2 sessions. That means that while we want to consider and perhaps take note of certain world facts, we do not need to build anything out. Preemptively building leads to you creating portions of the game that the players probably won't even play and may bypass completely. So the difference? Writing notes will say, this town has a blacksmith, a tavern, and an inn. Building then says, okay, the blacksmith's name is Daryl Breck. He's got a sister who went missing 3 days ago. He's going to give the players a discount if they do a quest to find her. He only sells horseshoes but has a secret stash of gold coin hidden in his fireplace, and he can repair armor, and his service is called... Like, no. You don't want to build out a whole town and stuff with content, because then your players could very well possibly be like, we're not going to go there. And then before you know, they're like, that's a hard pass. And now you, as the dungeon master, are sitting there like, spare yourself that pain. If this were a movie, think of it as being equivalent to saving film, right? You want to try and only shoot what's actually going to be in the movie, if that makes sense. So philosophy number 2, your GM notes are a living document, meaning nothing in them is officially canon until you speak it into existence at your table. If your notes say that the villain has fire powers, up until the moment that they fight him, you can change that to being ice powers instead. You're perfectly free to do that. The only stipulation is that once you make a decision at the table with your players, it has to remain consistent and permanent from then on. But until you actually say that something exists to your players, then to them, it doesn't exist. And having this paradigm shift will keep you as a DM from being married to your notes. When you form an attachment to what you've written, then you run the risk of writing a story and its ending. But it's the player's job to drive the story and determine its outcome, while the DM determines the story that emerges from the dice. It's not the DM's job to dictate the story that they created in their notes, and you run the risk of stripping your players' agency and having them act out a script as opposed to playing a living and evolving game. So try to divorce yourself from feeling like, once you've made a decision in your notes, that you can't change your mind later if you think something else is cooler, or if something else emerges at the table that makes more sense or fits the story better. Just go ahead and run with that. But okay, so this is usually the point where I get the question,
but Brewmaster, like, what if the campaign is starting in a village?
Okay, firstly, as a hard principle of mine, I believe that Unless you're running an urban campaign, there really is no excuse to start your campaign in such a mundane, bland, drab, overused, underwhelming, tedious, redundant, uninspired, plain, or boring location as some village off in the middle of somewhere, or even in a tavern for that matter, right? However, if you do decide to break this design principle and start your adventure in a village or a tavern, and I mean, you should have a real good reason for ignoring this principle, but if you decide to do, then the village should still just be a launching pad for your adventure.
But what if the PCs want to shop?
You know, this is the beginning of the campaign. Simply have them show up to the adventure with the gear that they plan on bringing. Your village is not your adventure, so don't waste your time building it. Make note of the general mood of the place. Maybe write 2 or 3 descriptions on a napkin and move on. If you need a town name, use fantasynamegenerators.com. If you need an NPC, use npcgenerator.com. Both sites can generate some interesting material that you can use on the spot, that you can generate on the spot. Just click the button if you need to. But unless the PCs plan on actually questing in that town, do not, for the love of God, build out shops, create unique NPCs, build out dens with secret loot and intricate quest lines between NPCs that your players will never hear or care about. Again, just save yourself that pain.
But the big bad evil guy, surely I must have to know about them.
Well, yes and no. There are only 3 things you really absolutely need to know about your bad guy, and you do need to know them. And remember, this is with game time in a couple hours and us needing the bones for a campaign. So the things that you absolutely need to know are your big bad evil guy's plot, their method or what they're willing to do to achieve it, and how he or she has already started to affect your world. What is the effect that they're having? So let's take Mr. Glass, for instance, right? He has the plot of finding a real superhero. What's he willing to do to achieve it? Commit horrible acts of terror. How has he already impacted the world? Well, he's been committing horrible acts of terror, so he's caused numerous catastrophes, including the train accident that our main character is in at the start of the film. Note, I didn't say you need to know your villain's evil plot. You just need to know their plot, because indeed, the bad guy can have a plan that is downright altruistic in nature, and often the bad guy does not see themselves as such. Often, it's their methods that make them a bad guy, not what they aim to do. But I'll get back into complex villain motivations in some other video, maybe in season 2. However, what we aren't going to do is build our big bad evil guy stat block. We don't even need to know their powers, what they look like, or even what their name is. A simple moniker such as
the Dark One
or
the Ancient Evil,
some other generic title, will work swimmingly for your players, I assure you. So write down what your villain is after, what he's willing to do to get it, what he's already done to affect the world toward that end, and you can use some random tables found in the DMG to spark your creativity. And for this to work, I have to say, you also have to have a sense of your setting and your genre. The setting frames the villain's actions. The genre determines the flavor of the actions that he takes. So if your setting is a desert or a jungle, let's say, then your villain's goals may vary to match the location, such as draining all the water in a desert setting or harvesting all the living trees, let's say, in a jungle setting. But your genre is going to determine the flavor that that takes. So the villain of a comedy may be draining all the water to fill up the pool in their resort, while a horror campaign villain may be draining all of the water to instigate enough death to power an evil summoning spell that she has in mind. So let's say we roll on some charts. Our big bad evil guy wants to become immortal. That's his plot. He's willing to open up a portal to hell to do so. And he's already affected the world by let's say there have been many disappearances lately in the night, accompanied by the strong smell of brimstone, and everyone has been having collective nightmares. And now that you know these 3 things about your boss, their plan, their method, the effect that they're having on the world, now you can start to generate, an NPC for yourself or a name, something that you can work from. It's useful, but it's not necessary. And I often find it useful to generate an NPC, and then I also roll up some descriptors for my bad guy too. However, it's important that you don't spend time building a stat block yet, because this is just the first quest and your players won't lay eyes on your villain for quite some time yet, and you as the GM just need a little background knowledge to get your first quest underway and to have that quest build naturally into a larger story. But for now, we should have all that we need to move on to our next focus, which is the starting quest. Now that you know what the big bad evil guy's plans are, the best way to create antagonism between the party and the villain is to ensure that their very first quest puts them into direct conflict with the villain's goals. Or in other words, the PCs succeeding on the quest that you give them will mean them hurting the villain's plans in some way, giving the villain plausible cause as to why they were going to be directly hostile toward the PCs for the duration of the campaign. This inherent conflict between the PCs and the big bad evil guy's goals creates drama, and that will pay off as the campaign progresses. And so following our earlier example, if we decided that our big bad evil guy needs an artifact to complete their plan, then the PC's very first quest should be to acquire and destroy that artifact, establishing them as an enemy from the big bad evil guy's perspective. Now, why they're on this quest in the first place, that does need context. That needs some framing. You can't just have your players stumble upon the quest of the big bad guy by accident. So consider the framing around these events, like why are they here? You can use a DMG chart for that, but I also find it very useful to use the villain's effect as a part of my framing. So let's say that the effect that he was having was causing nightmares, but the bad guy is causing mass bad dreams, then perhaps the PCs are actually just forced into going to find the source of the dreams and stopping it because they literally have not been able to sleep. Quest made. Now our PCs are in direct conflict with our big bad evil guy without even being aware of their existence. And the PCs now also have a reason to thwart our big bad, whether or not they even are aware of them. But now we can move on to the meat and potatoes. What are our PCs actually going to be playing? Because time's a ticking and we're probably already 20 minutes into the process depending. Well, this is what you need to know to start building your very first quest, okay? Where are the PCs going and why? Once we know these things, now we can start building out what our players will actually interface with. And because we haven't determined any hard facts about our villain or the world, we can now use these role charts to further inform ourselves of our world. And you'll find the role charts in the DMG. Why is, for instance, our starting location in an underground cave or in a glacier? What resources are there? Why is our nightmare artifact located there if we're using our earlier example? And if this is an extreme location, such as the mouth of a volcano or inside a glacier, then how can our PCs get there? How did the villain plan to get there? Or if the villain's been there before, how did they get there? What interesting world building ideas spring up from this? Once we know what our bad guy wants, which is the artifact, how the PCs will thwart him by destroying the artifact. Once we know where they're going, which is to the glacier, let's say, and what they're there to do, which they think they're there to just stop the source of the nightmares. They may not know about the artifacts, right? Now we can start building that playable location itself, and yeah, it's go time. We're gonna take everything that we know, all the interesting tidbits, the notes that we might have made, and we're gonna condense that down into a quest that fits on one page. Or in other words, we're gonna make a one-page dungeon. And in this dungeon, we can run our players through a concentrated dose of combat, exploration, and interaction that will connect to our larger goal of stopping the nightmares, but is also concise, right? And not too long-winded and can be finished in about a session or 2 or 3. And the first step of creating our OPD is a topic for another video. But please like this video if you did like what you heard, and if you didn't like what you heard, well then you have my special thanks for watching thus far. Please leave a comment on what you do to prep, and if I missed anything or if you especially agreed or disagreed with anything I said, please do let me know in the comments, and stay tuned for part 2 of the prep guide. And I just want to say, everybody, thanks so much for your patience. I know it's been a long time since I've come out with another one of these videos, but I've been real busy with my real job, and it's also just been generally really busy around here too. And the family's getting ready to move states, and that's been crazy, and it's taken a lot to set up this next big announcement that I have. But that's right, your boy just went pro. Yeah, I'm officially a professional game master, dungeon master, and you can find me on startplaying.games, running tables for many other happy players. Check out the reviews, right? If you like anything on my channels, if anything I say appeals to you, or you just want to play with me personally, then come on over to my page and request me. I have a special discount for subscribers of the channel right now, and if I get enough traffic, I eventually would like to host special events just for subscribers of the channel and patrons. So if that sounds like your jam, then go ahead and hit me up and let's start playing. Otherwise, stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see all of you in the next one.